Did you guys hear about that time Patrick Mahomes almost died? But he wasn't the only one. One NFL player was almost eaten by a shark, while another escaped a deadly explosion. These are the NFL players who almost died, while starting with a player who almost lost it all by trying to win it all. On January 2nd, 2023, the Buffalo Bills squared up against the Cincinnati Bengals in a major showdown that had everyone buzzing with excitement. You see, there was a lot at stake in this game. It was the second to last week of the regular season, and victory for the Buffalo Bulls would see them win the AFC North and overtake the Bengals in the playoff standings. So, for Bills' safety, Damar Hamlin. This was one of the biggest games of his career, and the win was the only thing on his mind. However, with roughly 6 minutes left on the clock in the first quarter, the worst happened. As Hamlin went for a routine tackle, he received a hard hit on the chest when Bengals wide T. Higgins barreled into his chest head first. Hamlin suddenly blacked out and dropped to the ground. Paramedics immediately rushed to the scene and began administering CPR, and for 9 minutes straight, they tried frantically to revive him. With little luck, paramedics patched him up and did the next best thing to keep him alive, which was to whisk him away in an ambulance to the hospital where he was placed on life support. By some miracle, he survived and made a full recovery. However, were it not for the quick thinking and response from the medics, Hamlin would never have returned from his date with the Grim Reaper. But while Hamlin almost died on the field, this next NFL star almost died off it. Okay, so this happened with the year 2014 coming to a close. So everyone, or at least most people, were having a good time while Cam Newton almost lost his life in a car crash. It was a warm Tuesday afternoon on the 9th of December, and since Cam Newton was off duty, he decided he was going to go watch a game film like he normally did on Tuesdays. On this fateful day, though, he picked up his matte black Dodge pickup truck and headed for the Bank of America Stadium. He was cruising around town with music blasting, bopping his head, feeling almost himself when, all of a sudden, all hell broke loose. See, just a block from the stadium, a black Buick sedan came out of nowhere and hit the back of Newton's truck like a wrecking ball, causing him to lose control. Like a scene from an action flick, his car swerved, flipped over multiple times, and landed on its side. Then, it slid across the road before coming to a stop.
This morning, after a frightening car crash, his pickup flipped after colliding with another car, and this video shows Newton wheeled away on a stretcher.
The airbags deployed and shards of glass splattered everywhere. The roof of his truck collapsed on the passenger side, and for a moment, Cam saw his life flash before his very eyes. He was dazed and in pain, obviously, from fracturing 2 bones on his lower back, but he managed to escape the wreckage through the window of the truck and staggered to the side of the road. Looking back at his truck, which was now completely totaled, his jaw dropped as he wondered how he slipped away from death's cold grip. He knew right then and there that he had been given a second chance to live, and he was going to live life to its fullest. But while the driver that hit Newton's car survived too, the victim of the next NFL player wasn't so lucky. Henry Ruggs dreamt for a long time of playing in the NFL as a wide receiver. In 2020, his dream came true after the Las Vegas Raiders drafted him. But instead of focusing on football, he started living in the fast lane, partying hard and getting tipsy in Vegas. One night in November 2021, he went all out with his chick in the Chevrolet Corvette to Topgolf Las Vegas. The lovebirds were getting wasted and partied hard into the night when at around 3 a.m., they decided it was time to head back home. But that was when the wheels fell off, literally. A drunken Henry Ruggs hopped into the driver's seat with his girl in the passenger seat. Without his seatbelt on and the music volume amped up to the heavens, he zoomed off into the night like a raging maniac. As the music blasted, so did the adrenaline, because his speedometer went through the roof as he was driving at 156 miles per hour. Crazy. You see, since Rugg was super tipsy, he didn't realize he was getting close to a Toyota RAV4. But by the time he did, it was already too late. What happened next would change his life forever. Ruggs slammed his brakes at top speed, but still smashed into the SUV. He hit it so hard that it was sent spinning like a piece of paper. Eventually, the SUV burst into flames. At that moment, Ruggs' car was badly damaged and he was in serious pain. As for the car he hit, the loud cry of a 23-year-old girl named Tinter was soon heard coming from it. So, the security officer and passerby stopped and tried to help, but Tinter was trapped inside her SUV with her dog as the smoke and fire grew bigger and swallowed her car. They couldn't help but quickly dialed 911. However, when the help came, the 23-year-old and her dog were already burnt to a crisp. They only managed to rescue Ruggs and his girlfriend. After all was said and done, Ruggs escaped death that morning, but his life changed forever. He had killed someone. He was charged and convicted of driving under the influence and vehicular manslaughter. He was immediately released by the Raiders and his NFL career was gone for good. Thankfully, though, Patrick Mahomes didn't get the same fate when he faced a near-death experience, but that's because he could have gotten something even worse. You see, just a month after Patrick Mahomes was drafted into the NFL, in 2017, he was robbed at gunpoint. Mahomes and 3 of his friends were returning home from someplace, but the problem was they didn't know 2 robbers were trailing them. So immediately, Mahomes and his friends stepped out of the vehicle. They didn't expect what came next, though. As they pulled up in Mahomes' driveway, the robbers hopped out of their car, while one of them gestured that he had a gun hidden around his waist. The robbers then demanded that Mahomes and his friends surrender their belongings, which they did, and they grabbed everything, got back in their car, and drove off. Mahomes quickly called the cops, and they tracked down the robbers and threw them in jail. For a moment, Mahomes had his life flash before his eyes. But while he was thankful the robbers didn't use their guns, the next players almost died because of a fish. One lowly evening, retired NFL player Rob Conrad decided to go fishing. He had his fishing gear ready and set out into the Atlantic Ocean alone on his 31-foot boat. Once he reached his fishing spot 9 miles from the shore, he put his boat on autopilot and then cast his rod into the water. But while he was fishing, something terrible happened. A gigantic wave towered over his ship, engulfing it, and in the process washed Conrad into the treacherous Atlantic while his autopilot ship zipped off towards the Dead Man's Reef in the Bahamas. Conrad watched in horror as his ship dashed off into the night, leaving him miles away from shore. His only means of communicating with the outside world was gone. So he started panicking, but began swimming, and eventually he saw a recreational boat about 50 yards away. He thought that was his ticket out of the cold and lonely Atlantic, but the boat didn't notice him and drove off. He was devastated. However, he didn't give up. He kept thinking about his 2 girls. But then, every positive view he held began to fizzle out after he couldn't flag down the Coast Guard's helicopter. Damn. Rob began to struggle with tiredness, hunger, thirst, and cold from swimming for so long. But then things took a turn for the worse. You see, Conrad managed to attract the attention of jellyfish, which began to sting him. And if that wasn't bad enough, sharks started circling him.
Bit by jellyfish. I was circled by a shark. Luckily, did one circle around and left.
Fortunately, he wasn't harmed, but while anybody would have given up at this point, the thought of his 2 daughters kept him afloat and gave him the motivation to continue his swim toward the distant shore. After swimming for roughly 27 miles in 16 hours, he started to hear the beautiful sound of waves crashing against the shore. His eyes lit up. He had just successfully survived a harrowing brush with death. Eventually, he was admitted to a hospital where he was treated for cold-related illnesses, extreme muscle breakdown, and dehydration. But while water almost took the life of Conrad, this next player had a crazy encounter with fire. Pierre-Paul was all about his firecrackers. Even as a youngster, he loved the sound of exploding fireworks and the resultant sparks lighting up the night sky. So when the NFL made him rich, he made sure to splurge that cash on his childhood hobby. On the night of the 4th of July, Pierre-Paul dropped over $8,000 on fireworks. He came prepared and had the fireworks on a U-Haul van as over 50 family and friends geared up to watch the show. Everything was going to plan. He was lighting up the skies with everyone having a good time until there were only a few fireworks left. What happened next sent shock waves throughout the NFL world. Jason tried lighting up the fireworks left, but the wind would blow out the fire. This would probably be the universe telling him to let the fireworks be, you know? But he didn't yield and kept trying until he finally lit it. But as soon as he lit it, he heard a loud bang and there was a bright greenish white flash followed by smoke. The firecrackers had exploded, but worse, his fingers were bloody and mangled. His thumb was barely hanging out, his index finger was pretty much gone, and his other fingers were disfigured. He was quickly rushed to the hospital where he underwent multiple surgeries to try to salvage what was left. Jason's fireworks accident was tragic, but he did stare death in the face and won. And that's it for the NFL players who almost died. Let us know in the comments below which incident shocked you the most.